welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're setting off on a really fascinating journey. We're going to trace the exact path from uncompromising clinical rules all the way down to some truly groundbreaking findings. Specifically, we'll be looking at how incredibly strict regulatory frameworks validate the efficacy of mesenchymal stem cell treatments, or MSCs, for lupus nephritis, which, as we know, impacts both systemic lupus erythematosus and chronic kidney disease. Okay, let's dive into this, because to truly appreciate a medical breakthrough, you have to understand the environment it was born in. Today, we're analyzing how strict good clinical practice, specifically the GCP 3rd edition standards, serves as the ultimate litmus test to validate MSC efficacy. We aren't just looking at medical miracles here. We are looking at scientifically proven, heavily audited data. If you look at the funnel right here on screen, it's a great metaphor for the process. Up at the top, you've got the regulatory blueprint, the GCP 3rd edition. Below that are the builders, essentially the whole clinical ecosystem of professionals. And finally, at the very bottom, you get the building itself, the pure, distilled MSC clinical data. Regulatory compliance literally distills down into precise, life-saving clinical proof.
Here is the roadmap for today's explainer. We're moving logically from process to proof across 4 parts. 1. The clinical blueprint. 2. The accountability ecosystem. 3. MSC clinical efficacy. And finally, 4. Validated renal recovery.
All right, Section 1, the clinical blueprint, establishing GCP standards. Before we can trust breakthrough data, we absolutely must understand the uncompromising rules governing it. You'll see 3 pillars here that form the uncompromising purpose of good clinical practice: subject protection, scientific validity, and data integrity. Notice how they all rest securely on the foundation of the Declaration of Helsinki. That is the ethical bedrock of all human trials. It means protocols have to be based on the latest science. The data must be rigorously precise, and above everything else, patient rights and safety are the absolute priority. To really ground us in why these regulations exist in the first place, I want to highlight this core philosophy derived from our experts. GCP guidelines ensure clinical data is highly credible and precise, while fundamentally prioritizing the subject's rights and safety above all else. It's a really delicate but totally necessary balance between advancing human knowledge and fiercely protecting human life. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it shows the vital evolution of these guidelines. We are currently on the 3rd edition of GCP, and it's a massive shift. We've moved away from labor-intensive, reactive paper reviews to a highly advanced, proactive system. We're talking continuous electronic data collection with immutable electronic audit trails. Every single modification is permanently tracked. Walk with me through this continuous loop on screen. A huge part of this modern approach is risk-based quality management, or RBQM. Rather than just waiting around for a mistake to happen, modern trials start by identifying potential risks early. They design strict protocols to mitigate those risks, use electronic systems for continuous monitoring, and execute rigorous quality assurance. It basically ensures a flawless, bulletproof data lifecycle. Moving right along to Section 2, the accountability ecosystem, who protects the patient. Let's look at the human element required to execute this blueprint. Real quick, to understand this ecosystem, let's clarify 2 distinct operational roles. First, the principal investigator, or PI. They're the boots on the ground, often right at the hospital, directly executing the trial and ensuring patient safety. Then, you've got the sponsor, or the contract research organization, the CRO. They're the architects who design the protocol and audit everything to ensure strict compliance. Notice how the protected subject is placed right smack in the absolute center here. They are completely surrounded by a protective umbrella. Regulatory bodies like the TFDA and IRB up top, the principal investigator ensuring informed consent, the clinical research coordinator facilitating data, and the sponsor or CRO actively auditing. The patient is just completely enveloped by accountability. So the crucial point is, this intense framework isn't just bureaucratic red tape. Rigorous GCP compliance actively drives precision and safety. It guarantees that the breakthrough MSC trial results we are about to look at are scientifically validated, not just casually observed. All right, time for the proof. Section 3, MSC clinical efficacy, the findings revealed. Let's unpack the actual data. Check out this study design baseline. We're looking at 2 major clinical studies observing MSC interventions. Study 1 has 87 patients, and Study 2 has 81. But look at the critical variable in Study 1. They explicitly excluded the use of steroids or immunosuppressants. Actually, think about how huge that is. It means they isolated the pure, unassisted efficacy of the MSC treatment itself, no interference. Following this timeline on screen for Study 1, look at the rapid response at just month 6. Proteinuria dropped sharply by 45%. And as we move through years 1 to 3, we see massive systemic improvement. GFR improves by 23%, and complement C3 increases by 36%, which shows disease activity is demonstrably lowered. By year 4, the outcome is staggering, a 50% complete remission rate. Now, you know in science, repeatability is literally everything. That brings us to Study 2, an independent cohort of 81 patients tracked over a single year in China. The results beautifully mirror the first study. At 12 months, urinary protein drops by 48%. Renal markers are way up. And incredibly, they saw a 60.5% partial remission rate and over 30% complete remission in just 12 months. And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of validated data. Look at the concordance between the 87-patient cohort and the 81-patient cohort. Across the board, proteinuria reduction, GFR improvement, C3 increase, the numbers are just incredibly tight. This remarkable statistical consistency powerfully validates the treatment's underlying biological mechanism of action. I actually want to pause just for a moment to emphasize this specific, staggering data point from Study 2, a 48% reduction in urinary protein. For patients suffering from severe lupus nephritis inflammation, this isn't just a statistic. It represents massive, tangible biological relief and a restoration of kidney function that could totally change their quality of life. Which brings us to the ultimate question for any new therapy in Section 4, validated renal recovery, safety and conclusion. Is it actually safe? Well, the data speaks volumes. We see exceptional survival rates, 94% over 4 years in Study 1 and 95% over 1 year in Study 2. Now, regarding the mortalities shown here, 5 deaths in Study 1 and 4 in Study 2, this is where the GCP framework proves its worth. Rigorous audits prove that 100% of these were strictly, totally unrelated to the MSC injections. The intervention is biologically potent but maintains an exceptional safety profile. Let's move to and see how this builds into our final summary graph. MSC treatments demonstrably reduce systemic inflammation. They durably restore critical renal functions. And they do it all with proven safety. This isn't anecdotal, it's breakthrough efficacy captured and verified entirely through the uncompromising global standards of GCP 3rd edition. Which leaves us with a truly exciting thought to ponder. With uncompromising GCP standards validating such high efficacy, how quickly will MSC therapies become the new global gold standard for autoimmune diseases? The data is crystal clear, the framework is solid, and the future of medicine is looking brighter than ever. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the data.